Further debate? I recognize the member from Whitby. Or Oshawa, my apologies.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And I'm very pleased to stand in my place and have a kick at this can. We're here debating Bill 45, the Peel Transition Implementation Act 2025. Bill 45 is the product of a 3-year policy failure marked by chaos, reversals, maybe a bit of intrigue, and a lack of meaningful consultation with municipalities, workers, or the public. At the heart of this piece of legislation, it transfers jurisdiction over regional roads and stormwater drainage infrastructure to the lower-tier municipalities, so Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon, where the infrastructure is located. And then these transfers will happen as of July 1st, 2026, or a date prescribed by the minister. So, Speaker, this bill doesn't do anything to stop bad, sprawl-oriented planning decisions that drive up infrastructure costs and development charges that are the purported reasons for regional restructuring in the first place. This government has already reduced the region's role by taking away Peel Region's planning responsibilities, transferring these to local municipalities with varying levels of planning capacity. And Speaker, I'm happy to delve into what this bill accomplishes and also the story of how we got to this bill, which is an interesting winding road of different pieces of legislation and backtracking, secret reports. So I will be happy to get into that. But I want to tell you why I'm interested in adding my voice to the Peel conversation, because folks know that that I'm the member for Oshawa, and I will admit freely, and as my community knows, I'm not from Oshawa, but I got there as soon as I could. But on my journey to Oshawa, I had the opportunity to live in a few different places. My dad's job, we traveled around a bit and had the chance to call a few different communities home. And so I lived in the Peel region, and I lived in Bolton, and I lived in Palgrave, and I have lots of fabulous memories of growing up in small towns and riding my bike with the neighbors. My dad built the house that we lived in Palgrave, so I saw that home from the ground up, become my childhood home there. But wonderful memories in that area. Speaker, you may not believe it, but it's true. I used to be a figure skater many moons ago. But I was a proud member of the Bolton Figure Skating Club, and it was at the top of the hill, and I was independent enough that I could leave my school at Elwood Public School and walk by myself all the way to the arena. I had free time at the library to get into all sorts of shenanigans, and then skate and get picked up, and we'd get Bolton pizza and drive it all the way home to our home in Palgrave. So down the road, like down the hill, up the hill, along Highway 50 with that hot pizza sitting on my knee, burning a hole through my skin, and it was a really long drive. It may have only been 15 minutes or so, but when you've got some of the best pizza in the world on your lap and you can't eat it till you get home, it's a really long drive. Anyway, I tell you that because when I think about Caledon, when I think about the Peel region, I do have connections to that area. As a figure skater, we did the Skate 6 Interclub, and I had friends who went to Mayfield in their program. We went swimming at Mayfield. I'm very excited that the member from Brampton North is here, because I threatened I was going to talk some smack about his neck of the woods, so I will do just that. I also had the chance to go to school in Brampton. I went to Goldcrest Public School for 2 years, grades 2 and 3, and one of my very first field trips was, I think, to the library, and there was a little petting zoo by Chinguacousy Park, and so I am not here to represent the fine folks of Brampton, but I do have a warm spot in my memory for those parts of the world. And the Speaker, could I interrupt the member for Guelph? Because I'm having a hard time concentrating. Thanks. Okay. And now I'll continue. So my time, though, in Bolton and Palgrave, my mother was a teacher at Pumpkin Patch Nursery School. In Palgrave, I went to Palgrave Public School. I was a Girl Guide, which probably surprises no one. Bit of a super keener. And our leader was Betty Burton, who wrote the Palgrave Patter in the newspaper. This was a small town, and when I have gone back to visit, I cannot recognize it. It has grown so much. The school that was once a small school is now like a massive elementary school campus. It still has that small town heart, but of course, as we're here talking about changing communities and growth, it is an area that continues to grow. And that we're here, we're talking about not just the growth, but we're talking about the provincial governments reaching into those municipalities and making decisions about what needs to happen. And so I wanted to also share that one of my connections to that area was with the Caledon Community Road Safety Advocacy Group. And they had reached out to me because they're very concerned about safety on the roads and trucking in the area, and they had put together a petition that I was very pleased to share in this room, but about illegal truck yards and road safety. And so I think that as we're talking about Peel transition implementation, and we're talking about challenges of growth, and we're talking about the needs of communities, this is one that I want to make sure the government understands. With all the changes in the area, but the roads aren't necessarily keeping up, and the laws aren't necessarily keeping up, and by law, Lord knows, can't keep up with these illegal truck yards and road safety. So I'm going to read from an article, Caledon Enterprise. A residents group has petitioned the province to address the illegal truck yards and road safety situation in Caledon and the surrounding areas. Oshawa MPP, the official opposition critic for infrastructure, transportation and highways, tabled the petition in the Ontario Legislature on behalf of the Caledon Community Road Safety Advocacy Group on December 12th. That was a year ago, Speaker. So we had a very involved conversation. It was like 2 hours so that we could really get into the weeds and have an understanding. They came back to me with this petition, which I introduced. But what was laid out in the petition, but continues to be a challenge for them, the illegal truck yards, and they're asking for this government to protect land use integrity. So as they said, the ability to barricade entrances to lands being used without proper zoning, increasing fines for violations and attaching these fines to the title of the property to ensure accountability. Speaker, we're dealing with numbered companies, we're dealing with kind of fly-by-night operations, and it's really hard to move trucks if they, can get in there onto a piece of land. It's hard to remove them, right? It takes a long time to do that. So they're interested in stopping them before they can move in. But enhancing truck safety measures, increasing Ministry of Transportation presence at inspection stations, establishing new inspection stations and conducting more mobile and surprise inspections, and improving truck driver training. These are their community roads, right? I talked about Highway 50 and going from Bolton Pizza down the hill, up the hill, and out to Palgrave, where we used to live. I still recognize that stretch of road, but a lot of the roads in that area are really congested with trucks, and the municipalities are doing all that they can to keep up with that and keep road users safe. And it is an uphill battle. So they're also wanting to see truck drivers better trained. Returning the responsibility for truck driver training and licensing to the Ministry of Transportation is one of their asks in the petition. Introducing an apprenticeship program to ensure drivers are adequately prepared before operating independently, another ask. So Franca Pisani started this group, the Caledon Community Road Safety Advocacy Group, this Facebook group, following the death of 23-year-old Adriana Milena McCauley, who was killed in a 4-vehicle collision in Bolton. So this group includes residents from Caledon, the surrounding areas of Brampton and Vaughan. they have said, quote, part of the reason the task force came into being was the fact that a group of residents had submitted a petition to Caledon Council in 2023 asking for relief from a situation where there was an illegal land use on a property around the border of Ward 3 and Ward 1, explained Doug Maskell, who is a councillor. And Speaker, this is a good reminder that I'll circle back to these folks. I mean, they have their own MPP, but when it comes to road safety, we don't have borders, do we? We like to visit our friends and family. I like to go back to my old stomping ground and maybe reminisce, but everybody wants to be safe on the roads, whether it's Northern Ontario, whether it's the rolling hills of Caledon. So I appreciate the opportunity to share that. But going back to the specifics of this bill, and maybe going back a little further, again, I might have been grade 5 or grade 6, and it was a Peel, like a Region of Peel initiative to introduce the black compost boxes, like the compost bins. And I don't remember quite whether they were free or whether families could buy them or whatnot, but it was a new thing, composting. And so we went to the regional headquarters and picked up our black compost bin, assembled it, set it up in the backyard, and my brother practically lived there. And I mean that because there were garter snakes and there were crawling things, and so he camped out by the compost bin catching snakes. I was not there with him, but I appreciated that municipalities do show leadership and do help community members, in this case, have a compost bin and be a bit more environmentally conscientious. But Speaker, back to this bill, so Bill 45, the Peel Transition Implementation Act, it's still not clear, and we've been talking about this for a while, but it is still not clear what problem this Peel restructuring is meant to solve. While cost savings have been mentioned by various proponents of restructuring and dissolution, no evidence has been published showing these changes will actually save anybody any money, and there are concerns that might increase costs. So it has been since June 2023, so about 2.5 years, since the Ford government passed suddenly announced plans to dissolve Peel Region, and then they flip-flopped. There have been policy lurches. There's been a cloak of secrecy. But in 2023, the Ford government passed Bill 112, the Hazel-McCallion Act, which provided for the dissolution of Peel Region and the establishment of a Peel Transition Board to make recommendations on how that dissolution would occur. And then Bill 112, that provided for this surprise dissolution of Peel Region, ended up being time allocated, which means to folks at home something about the debate and process was truncated. So it was time allocated, it bypassed committee entirely, and any opportunities for the public to make input or amendments to improve the bill. So that was quite aggressive, but despite that aggressive approach, 6 months later, the Ford government backtracked, announced that it would not dissolve Peel Region after all. And the dissolution provisions of Bill 112 were then repealed with Schedule 7 of Bill 185, which also limited the mandate of the Peel Transition Board to recommendations concerning land use planning, water and wastewater, stormwater, highways, and waste management. So, Speaker, it's been an interesting journey to get here, right? It was a surprise announcement to dissolve, and then the backtracking, and the Peel Transition Board had that restricted, I'll say, mandate, and the projected financial impact of these changes still remains a secret, not only to the public but also to the municipalities themselves. A previous proposal for the full dissolution of Peel, or of the Peel region, was scrapped after leaked documents indicated that dissolution would come with massive costs. So dissolution would have been financially disastrous, and the Deloitte analysis was leaked, and the projected $1.3 billion in extra costs and massive property tax hikes would have broken down to, by those numbers, 17% in Mississauga, 34% increase in Brampton, and 256% increase in Caledon. Those are big numbers. So taxes going up, what will happen with utility rates, the quality of services, people have questions. And the Peel Transition Board that I had mentioned earlier was kept completely in the dark, even as the government reversed its plans. So FOI released texts show senior officials repeatedly refusing to update the board chair. So this has been an interesting journey. The secretive, what's the real reason behind it? Because as I said, we still don't have a clear understanding of what problem this is meant to solve. So who have we been hearing from? I think we're all hearing the same things. Like Caledon Council had informed the province of its opposition to the downloading of the responsibility for regional roads and waste management services, warning of high costs. And with those high costs, what will become of the quality of services, utility rates, all of that, right? The folks in Caledon have real questions. In December of 2024, Mississauga Mayor Carolyn Parrish had written to the then minister to complain that Bill 240, that was basically this bill, but before the election, I think, is, quote, unfairly keeping our city on the hook as the financial cash cow for the municipalities of Brampton and Caledon, as we have been for 50 years, end quote, she says. So there are opinions. These would have been great voices, and among, I'm sure, many great voices to have invited to committee, but there wasn't committee. I am hopeful that we will have the opportunity for this bill to go to committee, because we do have questions, right? This will have real implications for folks. Peel taxpayers were billed $1.5 million for the transition board, despite there being little transparency around that work that was done or how the board members and consultants were selected or even compensated. And all of this uncertainty meant that Peel was unable for 2 years to borrow. It stalled their capital projects, is jeopardizing critical infrastructure investments, right? And that is the legacy of this government, right? Like that's kind of their MO, is chaos and uncertainty, more chaos, more uncertainty, then some more chaos and some more uncertainty. That just seems to be, Tuesday for this government. The government's action on this file in the Peel region story has caused severe instability and staff loss. Peel has lost roughly 400 staff with over 13,000 years of experience combined due to anxiety, uncertainty, and poor communication. And CUPE workers, they are very anxious about job security, collective agreements, possible privatization, and their fears are made worse by the lack of communication. So the government's refusal to engage directly with them isn't making it better. Community agencies in Peel that do a lot of the heavy lifting, that serve newcomers, survivors of violence, seniors, unhoused residents, youth, and people with health and addiction needs, they have been thrown into prolonged uncertainty by the government's actions. So again, chaos and uncertainty, and I don't imagine that's what the government is setting out to do, but without the transparency, without the release of the reports, people are just guessing, right? So the government should be transparent. That's what should be happening. The government continues to operate in secrecy. That transition board's recommendations from municipalities, like the transition board's recommendations are being kept secret, and not just secret from us here in this House, but from the municipalities themselves, from residents, despite the fact that, as I said, it was the Peel taxpayers who were billed $1.5 million for the transition board. This is a story that could happen to any municipality, right? It is the story of this Premier's fascination with municipal meddling. Bill 45 is not a coherent solution. It is a watered-down response that downloads responsibilities without clarity, without transparency, or a public financial plan. And again, this is a bill that is about chaos and uncertainty, and I still, Speaker, after delving into this, am not sure what problem this bill is seeking to solve. And after listening to the government members, I don't know if they know either. So, Speaker, I will leave it there, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Questions? I recognize the member from Thornhill, Markham Thornhill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member from Oshawa for that presentation. Speaker, I came from the municipal world. I could able to understand why this bill is very, very important. You know, I often talk about York Regional government structure. 50 years old, 60 years old. We're losing a lot of taxpayers' dollars. End of the day, we don't have that calculation yet. But taxpayers, especially property taxpayers, going to save hundreds of $millions doing all these changes, Mr. Speaker. Given this legislation, the member, my question to you, this bill engage with the local municipal leaders, along with the regional councillors, locally passed bylaw and council resolution. Can the member opposite confirm when the party intended to respect the local consensus, or will they oppose? Will that simply implement what Peel-owned council have asked for?
I recognize the member from Oshawa.
Okay. Some of the folks in this space will remember that Bill 112 was like a surprise, that the government was just going to dissolve Peel, and everyone was kind of left scrambling. And then the report or the recommendations from the transition board, which we haven't seen, might have impacted the fact the government then did like a U-turn and decided they weren't going to dissolve. And now here we are, and we've had various bills and repealings of previous, like it's been a bit of a dog's breakfast to get to this point. And when you say that you've consulted, well, there were no committee hearings allowed for the dissolution of Peel.
Response,
so
please.
How is that consultation? And I'm reading questions and comments from Caledon Council into the record, and also Mississauga Mayor into the record.
Questions? I recognize the member from London Fanshawe.
Thank you, Speaker. And honestly, the pattern of legislation that this government has brought forward, I go back to 2018. Their first act was to change the Toronto Municipal Act, and it literally was a power grab when they were changing the boundaries when it came to a municipal election. And continually, they're involving themselves in municipal jurisdiction, municipal laws, downloading to municipalities. And the member described, very well the different bills that they've done. It's basically a shuffle every day. Every time we're in session, there's a new bill for this and a new bill for that. Who are they consulting? I want to ask the member, who do they think they are consulting? Because this is a long-standing topic that we still don't have any clarity. Who's asking for this legislation?
I recognize the member from Oshawa.
I am sorry to disappoint the fine member who asked the question, but I do not have any insight and cannot answer that. I think that in the case of Bill 112, that had been a deathbed promise. The Premier wanted, that was the Hazel McCallion Act, that this it came from an idea from the Premier, but I don't know who else wants this. And obviously, the government has done an about-face, that this is not the dissolution in front of us, that this is the Peel Transition Implementation Act. But no one's community is safe from this Premier's meddling. The region of Durham, I hope that anything that the government decides about them will be with them, not, nothing about them without them. But we are seeing the Premier just loves municipal politics so much.
Questions? I recognize the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Well, thank you, Speaker. First of all, I want to say to the member, I enjoyed listening to your story about Caledon. Those were my background playfields as a kid, growing up in Streetsville, as I've spoken about in this House. And I can say that when I took on this ministry, this is one of the first things we had to consider. And one of the first things I did with respect to this bill was consult. So I think she should know that I've spoken to every mayor in every community, the 3 main cities in Peel, and all, to a T, completely support this legislation. So my question to the member would be simply, why are you saying there was no consultation when there was absolute consultation, thorough consultation with all the key municipalities?
I recognize the member from Oshawa.
Well, I am very reassured to hear the minister say that the minister has talked to mayors and has done his own consultation. As a member of this fine legislature, I love it when I get to go to committee and hear from folks myself, because I'm not yet, am I a minister? But I haven't had the opportunity to hear from these folks, right? So when government does behind-the-scenes consultations and doesn't allow committee to come to this House, then the House misses out. And as I've said, when we have stood in our place and said, what is the problem that this restructuring is meant to solve, the folks speaking to this, their talking points don't tell them, and then therefore they can't tell us. So still, the consultation, glad to hear the ministers had conversations, but what does that look like for the rest of us if we still don't know why this piece of legislation is here?
Questions? I recognize the member from Ottawa, West Nepean.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to my colleague from Oshawa for helping us to understand the chaos and uncertainty and confusion around this bill when we had a bill for dissolution, a bill to repeal the dissolution, now a bill to transition, the uncertainty about who's asking for what, who's getting what. We just heard the minister say he consulted, but we just have to take the government's word for what the people that he consulted said. Does the member agree that we could address all of this chaos and uncertainty and provide some clarity, some actual sunshine on who's asking for what, what's happening, and make sure that the third time's the charm and we actually get it right, so that we're not back here in 6 months debating a fourth bill, that this bill should just go to committee so everyone can hear from the stakeholders and we can make sure we've gotten it right this time.
I recognize the member from Oshawa.
Thank you. And further to that, consultation is one piece of it, right? That doesn't mean everybody wants it. That the government may or may not have consult, or that the government did consult with, because as we're hearing, like it was May of 2024, Caledon Council had informed the province of its opposition to the downloading of responsibility for roads and waste management services, and they had warned of high costs. So what does that look like, and will there be mitigating considerations? Like, what is it going to look like for the taxpayers? Because that leaked report that we don't get to see, but the leaked Deloitte report, 17% Mississauga, 34% increase in Brampton, 256% increase in Caledon for their property taxes going up. What will this look like for utility rates? What will this look like for quality of services? I have questions. Please let this go to committee just so that we can find out, please.
I recognize the member from Mississauga-Malton.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Speaker. I love these kind of conversation and debates because we got to know each other too. I never realized we have so much common with the member from Oshawa. You lived in Peel. I'm living in Peel. You were doing skating, not the figure skating. I can't do that. But I was doing roller skating while growing up, and I loved it. So I heard you were saying what is in this bill. So let's talk about what is in this bill. This bill, the Peel Transition Implementation Act 2025, would give jurisdiction over waste collection and regional roads to lower-tier municipalities to deliver high-quality service for residents. It is going to reduce the cost. It's going to give them more control on these important issues so that they can help the resident. So my question to the member is very straight and simple. What else do you would have anticipated in this bill? What could have been done? And what do you think of giving this control? Do you think it will help?
I recognize the member from Oshawa.
Thanks. Well, I didn't say what. I wasn't asking about what is in the bill. I was saying why. Like, what is this seeking to accomplish? However, since the member just suggested that this is going to reduce the costs, that is something we've heard before, that cost savings has been mentioned by various people who are seeking restructuring and dissolution, but we haven't seen the evidence. So where is the evidence that has been published somewhere that shows that these changes will actually save any money? There are concerns that this will increase costs. And maybe it will, maybe it won't, but what numbers are you looking at to suggest that it will reduce them?
Response, please.
Release the recommendations from the transition board. I think that that is first, and that's fair. And let this go to committee so that people can share what they know. Thank you.